and that'll be arbitrary in nature. And then I think they will also have multilateral defaults among nations, and the final configuration I don't know of as yet because we're not close enough to that happening. But that's what I think they intend to do, and that, of course, is why gold and silver are doing as well as they have, because people are saying, gee, I don't want another fiat currency. Now, that currency, the SDR, won't be used in commerce domestically by nations. Nations will still have their dollars and their pounds, etc., until they decide to make a change in that as well. But for the time being, I think they'll revalue and devalue the currencies versus the SDR. I also feel, and I was talking about that when the break came, is that the European nations and the European banks are no better off now than they were 2.5 to 3 years ago. And neither are the banks in the United States. And there's another crisis brewing. Nothing has been put to rest over there. I think that eventually the weaker countries will pull away from the euro, and I think it'll be abandoned. And why I say that more than anything else is that not all the mistakes that they've made, which should be prevalent to people who watch that scene, but also I see in Europe a movement toward decentralization. They went into centralization with the euro and the European Union, and it really hasn't worked very well. The German public really wants to get out of both of them, and I think they think it's time. They think that was in part punishment for what went on during World War II, as was the grievous price that they had to pay to join the two Germanys together some time ago. I guess it was in 1991, 92. And so I see disruption there. Well, this is being reflected throughout the world. I mean, we've got all kinds of banks that are insolvent, central banks. We got the United States government, particularly the Treasury, and other central banks, along with the Federal Reserve, who are trying to make and talk gold down for the last 25 years, relatively unsuccessfully. And I think what we're doing on talk radio, as well as on the Internet, is really taking its toll. And we talk about this every week. And I heard you talk about it with David Icke as well. We've got them on the run, and we've got to keep them that way.
Well, Australia has announced, because their government's approval ratings are literally in the low 20s, and when the people are asked, why are you angry? We're angry about the carbon tax, which is very draconian there, the most draconian in the world we've seen, where they just laid over half the country's land that people already owned, that farmers were using off limits. We're mad about the carbon tax. We're mad about internet censorship. And so they've now said, okay, we're going to drop it for a year. And they admitted because of an election coming up. And I see this tactic constantly. They can tell when we build up to a critical mass that if they continue to fight us, we're going to win. So they always back off. That's like twice in the last 5 years, they were going to put illegal toll roads on 183 North, Mopac, 290, all the major roads of Austin where you can go nowhere. I mean, I live 15 miles at least from my office, and I can get here in about 15 minutes because there's big, nice highways that were built in the last 2 decades, and I paid for them, and they're all paid for, and I paid for them with a gas tax, and they admit this isn't even about paying for new roads. This is about taxes because foreign center of Spain has come in. This is globalism, and bought off politicians. And so 5 years ago, they were going to do it. The people got mad. They backed off. And then about 2.5, 3 years ago, they said, oh, we never even said we were going to do it. And now they've announced we don't care what you say. We're taking 3 lanes and making 2 of them a toll road when that's illegal to make an existing road a toll road, federal and state law, and they just don't care. And then we'll fight them again, and then they'll back off again. They never give up. We can never give up. We need to understand that this is a 12-round fight here. But what can you, when we come back, that tactic they use, Bob, because it makes me so angry.
Well, it's a strategic withdrawal. It's dialectic in nature. And and I'll come back with you.
We'll talk about it when we get back. It just makes me so mad. And, of course, it's Kirk Watson, and everybody's got their local shyster like him, this former mayor that literally stole tens of thousands of acres from people, turned around and gave it to himself, built things all over it when it's supposed to be environmental preserves, and now he's illegally up there, openly illegally. I mean, it's illegal. Going to slap toll roads on everything when we've beaten him over and over again. Okay, Bob, getting into that point of strategic retreats, because they know that we're not playing this conscious game of deception like they are. And so every time that we reach critical mass, they're going to beat them. They retreat, but only attack again. It's basically like in a war, someone saying, let's have a ceasefire. And you go, okay, and lower your guns, and they shoot you in the chest. Continue commenting on that.
Well, they want us to lose momentum. They want us to forget about it. They want the public to forget about it. And then they'll come back stronger than ever. And only we're going to be waiting for them. Because we know their tactics, and our listeners are gaining knowledge in the games that are played.
Well, plus it shows what crooks they are, that they constantly, internationally, nationally, and locally, lie and say, we're done, it's never going to happen. And then they come back again.
Yeah, it's kind of like zombies. But anyway, you like that, huh? But anyway, that's what their game is. I was reading a piece by Carol Quigley today, who wrote in 1965 about what the Illuminists were going to do and spelled it all out. I was amazed at the time that he wrote the book, but it shows you maybe in modern times the beginning of their arrogance. And, you know, Freud and others touched upon the control of the masses. In fact, I'm running a piece along with all of those links from InfoWars. I must have 6 or 7 of them on there. And because they're great. And so if you don't mind, I'll continue to run them. And so we're talking about the control of the minds of Americans and people throughout the world. And we're going to beat them at their own game by telling people the truth and telling the people that this is what they're doing to you with the media. You may not realize it. You may have a high school degree or a couple of years of college or even a degree, but you're not trained in that area, and you don't see the things that we see. I know when I went in counterintelligence, one of the first things that we read about was brainwashing. That's what it was called in the early 1950s. And so it hasn't really changed a lot since then, except it's become more sophisticated and the depth of knowledge is far greater. But don't let them fool you. We're here for a reason, and we're here to help you. And that's why we do what we do, especially me at my age. And so let's keep the pressure on them. And when they ease up, we'll remind them, we know what you're doing.
Well, they know that the momentum is shifting against them. Before we get back into the economy and the calls in the next segment, they won an Iran war. And now it's just all over the news that they're going to go ahead and strike Iran, maybe even use nukes on them. I mean, I guess even though they know it's going to be unpopular and illegal, they've got to do it as a political distraction because everything else they're doing is falling apart.
That's right. And, you know, how do we explain this plethora of warships and Marine personnel off of Costa Rica?
Oh, that's another.
What's your take on that?
44 ships. The government's voted to allow troops and Marines and helicopters and armored vehicles on the land to fight drug dealers. And it sounds like some kind of bizarre coup, like the government of Costa Rica is bringing the U.S. in ahead of them being voted out in elections. I mean, that's all you can see it as. Now Costa Rica, I guess, has to be invaded.
Well, I live there. And, it's a great center for laundering money. But in the time I lived there, there was very little drugs in the country. And, maybe you're right about the politics, but, I know many people and families who are, quote, at the top of the government. And, there isn't a lot of difference between either party. I find it hard to buy that the new president, which is a lady, I think her name is Chihuahua, or something similar to that. Please excuse me if I'm wrong. I don't know that there's a political problem. I really can't figure out what they're doing there yet. I sure can figure out what's going on in the Persian Gulf. I mean, that's very obvious, as you said. They're getting ready to go.
Well, I tell you, if you look at Grenada and then you look again at Panama, they use the same lie both times. They would say terrorist, and this is 100% was some truth to it in the island. But with the case of Panama, they just claimed that college students had been kidnapped. And then it was on local news and even came out in some U.S. news that they went to the dormitory and the girls said no one was holding us hostage. And they just invaded and blew the hell out of Panama City for no reason.